Hey les Frenchies, c'est Marie de Just French It. Now, in this podcast, we are going to discuss learning French on your own. Is it possible? What can you actually do on your own? And how to get started? If you don't know me, welcome, I am Marie. I'm a native French teacher and I speak on the internet about language learning. I'm fluent in Français, obviously, and English, and I'm currently learning Svenska. Yeah. If you wish to follow me, subscribe and check the description. I send daily emails filled with my best tips to take your French to the next level. Now back to our topic of the day, learning French on your own. Now, we have to start with this and better get rid of this first. You cannot learn French completely by yourself for an obvious and practical reason that French is a language and that a language is made to communicate. So at some point, you're going to have to communicate, and to communicate, you need someone else. Plus, French is, not something that you can figure out on your own. You're going to have to use materials that are created by other people, so we can wonder if you are really learning French by your own. Okay, I went very far with this one. In fact, there are a few things that you could do to learn French, or to minimize the amount of, or your need for someone else when you are learning French. And I'm going to show you what those things are just right now. So here's what you can do on your own. You can study French grammar on your own. That's a big one. Grammar is not something that changes a lot from one speaker to another, and it's not written in stone, obviously, but it's more like a science. There are rules to follow if you want to speak French correctly. Officially correctly anyway. So to study French grammar on your own, you can follow a course that teaches you step by step what you need to know. And there is one in the description for that. You can find a grammar book or, one of those big programs to follow as well, even if I'm not a big fan of that. You could maybe actually learn plenty from this. Or you could also do this on your own and, pick topics to research over the internet. French tenses, French adjectives, how to form a sentence in French, etc., etc. And you learn bit by bit. Learning French grammar on your own is actually what I recommend because it's easy to do and it requires you to take the time to understand each part before you move to another one. You don't have a teacher pressing a whole class of people to learn this. You do it at your own rhythm. So it's good for your memorization and for your French in overall. The second thing that you can do on your own is to learn French vocabulary. Because of course you can, and you should also learn vocabulary on your own because vocabulary is something that you are going to pick from so many different places anyway. The movies you watch, the text that you read, the podcasts you listen to. So to learn vocabulary on your own, I suggest that you have a place to put this vocabulary. Some place where you can come back to and check on the words that you've learned and that you want to memorize. It can be a notebook, but you can also just listen to my podcast on the bank method. It's the one called the bank method, where I'm talking about notebooks and better ways to store your French vocabulary to memorize it better. Third thing that you can do on your own is to learn the sounds of French because, there's no way you can truly work out your whole French pronunciation totally on your own and get perfect by yourself. But learning about the sounds of French and training to pronounce and recognize them is going to help you in that matter. Even though it's not enough, to make sure that your pronunciation is understandable by natives. And I've actually created a tool for that. It's a video database of all of the sounds of French. And you should check the description, it's in there. And of course, finally, to learn the sounds of French, you can listen to as much French as possible on your own to get used to the articulation, the sounds, the important words, the way French people pronounce, etc., etc. By watching plenty of movies, listening to podcasts, and watch YouTube videos again. And this is truly what you can do. So, three big things. You can study French grammar on your own, you can learn vocabulary on your own, and you can learn the sounds of French on your own as well. But in all those three ways, and to learn French on your own, there is one big rule that you need to follow, one big pattern, if you will. And it goes like this. Determining a goal working towards it, and then achieving it. So one goal, working towards it and achieving it. It sounds very simple, but I receive a fair amount of questions that go something like this. What should I learn first? What should I do next? And yes, it's good to wonder this kind of things, but learning a language is, it's definitely not an exact science. There's not one straight path to French fluency. You can start by learning something else than just bonjour, je m'appelle, right? Which is what most people start with. Or you can start learning about grammar with tenses rather than word nature. Or you can start about anywhere. You could even start with the most complicated grammar rule. I will not advise you to do so, but you could totally start with that. So my big advice for you is to take it step by step and to not worry too much about the order of those steps, right? You start somewhere, you dig deep in that sort of topic or subtopic of French, if you will, and then you move on to something else, something you haven't understood, on something that you need to understand to fully understand the topics that you started with. It doesn't really matter what the order of those, in what order you learn. It really doesn't matter. Do your thing. Adapt if it's not giving you enough results, and just ask yourself, what is it that I want to be able to do in French? And then work towards that. Study to practice that and get better and take it as it comes, and you'll get there, and you'll definitely get there. So remember to subscribe to Just French It. Leave me a review on iTunes if you liked this episode, and I'll see you next time. Salut!